Good day everyone. Today we're going to talk about some of the changes that have happened to the French Haiti Revolution. The French Haiti Revolution has been fundamentally changed by two factors. One directly affects the revolution by turning pirates into shock infantry, so rather than being budget pikemen, they are now budget rattan shields. In other words, they aren't your anti-cavalry infantry anymore. Now they are your infantry that acts like a pocket-sized, half-pop, half-health cavalry hussar. The second fundamental change that affects this revolution comes from the overhaul to the French civilization. It used to be that French pikemen and crossbows were essentially useless once you hit age 3, unless of course you were performing a pike rush, where you would make a ton of pikemen, maybe mix in a few crossbows to snipe infantry that tried to stop you, and then use the large siege attack on your pikemen, which a lot of new players don't even realize they have, to take out the enemy's houses, putting a lot of pressure on them while they were still hoarding up their own resources like a dragon instead of building military units. Because getting to the fortress age as quickly as possible, and thereby accessing your newer, more powerful units like the falconet, skirmisher, and the dragoon, that was the way to victory. You go semi-fast fortress, getting to that third age as quickly as possible without neglecting your economy, and only building military units when you were forced to by your opponents, embracing the philosophy of greed is good, like you were the wolf of bloody Wall Street. This trend towards greed opened the door for more rushes, briefly making the Lakota king, and it encouraged less skilled players to just spam hussars or Cossacks to kill villagers in team games, encouraging tactics like the pike rush in Eurocivs on Euro Civ 1v1 matches. The primacy of these rush strategies, however, was undercut as players got better at defending against early pressure, with the amount of resources they spent defending against your rush or timing attack steadily going up. Players' defensive IQ, it just got higher. If you spent 500 resources building the units for your rush, they would end up spending maybe 500 resources building units to defend against your rush. And, well, in theory, you were putting pressure on them. In reality, unless you were able to idle their villagers, you really didn't get much from that attack. And, I mean, if they're the Dutch, then they probably just threw up some walls, had the skirmishers hide behind the walls, and then they shot your units to smithereens with sheer impunity. That typically went on until the Third Age, when both players were able to build their goons and their skirmishers and get locked in a goon/skirmisher war with maybe a few falconets mixed in. So you saw the relevance of the pikemen, and by extension, pikemen-like units, who was basically a pirate who had higher movement speed. Well, those units didn't really have a place in the world of fast fortresses to a goon/skirm/falc contest. So with the pike rush effectively dead, you saw some players resurrect the Samwise hussar/musketeer combo as a way for French players to exert early aggression, which was helped along and made possible by the strong French early economy with Corps de Bois, which was able to support the greater gold cost of the early attacks with musketeers and hussars. And this combination has a fundamental advantage over the pike/crossbow combo because it performs better in the mid-game, giving the French player the time that they need to supercharge their economy and mass stables, so that they can then bludgeon the enemy into submission with endless waves of cuirassiers in the late game. All of this, however, was turned on its head with the new French cards, which make French infantry viable again. French archaic units are viable into the mid-game now, and those new cards open the door for a greater variety of tactics, whether that be the old Musk and Hussar combo, a French goon and skirmisher combo, the old school cuirassier and goon combo, a mix of archaic units buoyed by native units that you can get your hands on, or a gunline style build where excellent French cannons are protected by a front line consisting of halberdiers with ranged units like musketeers or skirmishers, sometimes mixed in. But to fully understand how all of this has changed the French Haiti Revolution, we need to understand several concepts. We need to understand the concept of the gunline, the utility of shock infantry, and the phenomenon known as the Aztec problem. The gunline concept, which is mainly used by the Dutch, but can also be exploited by some late-game Russian players, is the idea that you pair your squishy but high-damage units like falconets, or Dutch H2 skirmishers, or well, any Dutch skirmishers for that matter, with high HP melee units, like the Dutch H2 halberdiers, or the Dutch H4 halberdiers. In Russian hands, this strategy instead takes the form of a large pack of Russian halberdiers zealously guarding a few heavy cannons, as the Russian halberdier has a higher HP pool than other Russian infantry and can thus soak up more damage. thereby putting an effective meat shield between your opponent's cavalry and the Russian heavy cannons that are currently pounding your enemy's expensive units into paste. In the past, these pirates were just reskinned pikemen, though they did gain the range attack of an H2 skirmisher after they were upgraded by the Letter of Marquis card, a card which changed their name to Bucaneers after you sent it. Back when the pirates were like that, utilization of the gunline concept was a fundamentally key part of using Haiti effectively, as it helped the players use Bucaneers effectively, instead of throwing them away like they were scraps on your plate. And it helped to remind players of the sheer importance of falconets in any Haiti army. Bucaneers were reasonably effective against cavalry, creating a meat shield that could effectively protect your precious falconets, while their ranged special attack ensured that they weren't dead weight when your forces weren't in melee, as they could still do some damage while you waited for the enemy to close in, usually by suiciding their cavalry into your formations to try and get at those falconets and take them down quickly with a few cavalry hits, since falconets aren't known for their melee resistance and cavalry does deal a decent amount of melee damage. Things have changed in some ways with the latest update, as your Buccaneers are no longer budget pikemen. Instead, your Buccaneers are now shock cavalry, albeit shock cavalry that gains the ranged attack of an H2 skirmisher after you send the Buccaneer card. And with this new speed, you can pull off neat tricks, like kiting slow-moving hand infantry like halberdiers, which would otherwise tear your Buccaneers to pieces in melee now that your Buccaneers are tagged as shock infantry, which the halberdiers do bonus damage against. Also, despite being shock infantry, the Buccaneers kept their decent siege attack, which lets them turn into an anti-building monster if you research folk heroes at the tavern, and also send the advanced arsenal card so that you can research pillage, which boosts the siege attack of cavalry and shock infantry like the Buccaneer. With folk heroes and pillage research, the Buccaneer can take down buildings just as fast as they did before, with their 6.25 speed making them a complete menace, as there aren't a whole lot of things that your opponent can do to stop you once you've built a force of 70 Buccaneers, and you then decide to use these Buccaneers to send your opponent's factories into the Shadow Realm. Interestingly enough, though, despite the Buccaneers changing to shock infantry, the viability of your Haiti gunline hasn't decreased at all, because the new Sans Suisse French card improves the durability and resistance of your pikemen, halberdiers, and crossmen, which makes your pikemen more useful and your halberdiers even more tanky, while the French Royal Army lets your halberdiers and musketeers gain promotions, which lets your halberdiers and French musketeers stay viable into the late game. So, while you will no longer receive a trickle of free pikemen with a special ranged attack through the Haiti Revolution, the changes to France ensure that your other infantry can more than pick up the slack. So, the Haiti gunline is as strong as ever, since the French gunline is stronger than it's ever been, thereby ensuring that the pirate class change from heavy infantry to shock infantry hasn't weakened your effectiveness as Haiti. Instead, it has given you one new tool to destroy your enemy with, as you now gain access to shock infantry with the French Haiti Revolution. What are shock infantry? Shock infantry are infantry that act like cavalry. They entered the stage with the release of the War Chief expansion, with the introduction of Aztec, Coyote Runner, and Eagle Runners, with Coyote Runners being melee shock infantry, taking the place of a Eurociv's Hussar, and the Eagle Runner acted as range shock infantry, taking the place of a Eurociv's Dragoon. Once the Asian Dynasty expansion came out, even more shock infantry were added to the game, with the disciples trained by your Shaolin master now acting like ultra-budget pocket cavalry. Well, you also had native units like the Rattan Shield, which also proved to be surprisingly effective shock infantry, who could cut down enemy skirmishers and cannons to pieces whenever they were able to close the distance with them. It is worth noting that Rodoleros, Barbary Corsairs, and Rajput are not shock infantry. They are fast-moving heavy infantry, which move almost as fast as cavalry, but when it comes to their bonuses against enemy units and other units' bonuses against them, heavy infantry still have the same bonuses and weaknesses as normal infantry, so they'll be weak against well-protected skirmishers and well-protected falconets, whereas your shock infantry have the same weaknesses and strengths as cavalry, which means they'll normally perform very well against skirmishers and very well against falconets, at the cost of getting eaten up by dragoon-type units. The reason why the difference between shock infantry and heavy infantry is so blurry for players who aren't in the know is because there's not a whole lot of difference between a cuirassier rolling up and completely smashing unprotected falconets, and a German doppel sword boy rolling up and completely wrecking falconets. With Age of Empires 3 Definitive Edition, a new shock infantry unit entered the mix, the infamous Inca Chimu Runner, a unit that quickly taught new players the idea that not cavalry units ride a horse. As the Inca ran up and down the ladder when the game was first released, so everyone and their mum was spamming Chimu Runners like they were going out of style, until Chimu Runners were nerfed, and Inca players at the top of the ladder switched to spamming Jungle Bowmen ad infinitum. Then, more shock infantry were introduced with the African Royals expansion. This is seen in the form of the Ethiopian Shotel Warriors, though these units were underappreciated, and Shotel Warriors were almost instantly overshadowed by the Desert Raider unit, an outlaw unit that excelled at destroying enemy buildings, and was just as useful as the Shotel Warrior, arguably more useful at disrupting the enemy's early economy. On paper, the Shotel Warrior has identical stats to the Coyote Runner, so those two units should be roughly equal, but the difference is in the cards. As the Coyote Runner has cards that make it useful into the late game, such as the Silent Strike Home City card that lets them turn invisible, the Coyote Combat card that helps them become more durable and effective in straight-up fights, as well as the Ruthlessness card that makes them very effective at raiding, as they now do bonus damage against enemy villagers. These cards gave the Coyote Runner greater utility in the early game and kept them a viable option into the late game. And that made all the difference, keeping the Coyote Runner in its spot as an important part of the Aztec roster, while the Shotel Warrior never came into its own. So now we understand the nature of shock infantry, or as I like to call them, pocket cavalry, and the factors that led to shock infantry being successful versus criminally underused. Let's look at the Beta Pirate and the Sigma Male pillage-boosted Buccaneer. The Pirate has similar stats to the Rattan Shield now, which makes them useful enough, though it is worth remembering that Rattan Shields are native units while the Pirate is an outlaw unit, so the two will have different upgrade paths, with the Rattan Shield mainly benefiting from home city cards that boost the health and damage of native units, as well as any upgrades you get from the Shaolin Temple, whereas the Pirate is a outlaw unit, so that means that to upgrade them, you instead have to head to the tavern and research folk heroes, which will both slightly increase their stats and also cut their training time down quite a bit, followed by then sending the Letter of Marquis to give them both their ranged attack, which gives them a lot more utility. It is also strongly recommended that you send the Advanced Arsenal card before going with the Haiti Revolution, as the Advanced Arsenal cards will greatly benefit the Buccaneer. The pirates that you can train for 110 gold with the Haiti Revolution take up 1 pop rather than 4, making it easier for you to mass them. They are shock infantry with a high siege attack, kind of like how oprichniks are Russian cavalry with a high siege attack. And once you research the Advanced Arsenal Technology pillage, they can shred through enemy buildings like nobody's business. After you research Letter of Marquis, your Buccaneers will have a volley mode ranged attack, which makes them behave like an H2 skirmisher, where they will do bonus damage against enemy infantry, as well as bonus damage against enemy light cavalry, such as dragoons. Buccaneers that have been boosted by the pillage upgrade also avoid the Shotel Warrior syndrome by dint of their huge siege attack, as they, as previously mentioned, turn into little French oprichniks or Fanar cavalry, moving fast as lightning but having the ability to burn down any building they come across if your opponent looks away for half a second. But the Buccaneers also have another ace in the hole, thanks to a phenomenon known as the Aztec problem. When the Aztec civilization was first introduced, no one knew how to counter them, mainly because all of their units look like infantry. Their shock cavalry Coyote Runners look like infantry, their ranged shock cavalry Eagle Warriors definitely do not look like dragoons, and who would guess that their Arrow Knights are secretly 2-pop culverins that eat through falconets through breakfast. There was definitely a strong learning curve when it came to facing down the Aztecs. However, as players became more familiar with the Aztec problem slowly died down. There are 2 key factors that feed the Aztec problem. One part of the problem is a unit looking like another kind of unit, but acting like another. For example, Pistol Arm Buccaneers look like normal gunpowder infantry when they're in volley mode, only they can switch to their melee mode and sprint like Usain Bolt onto your opponent's falconets the second there's an opening. Well, the other part of the Aztec problem is a lack of familiarity. As almost no one uses Buccaneers, few people will be aware of their unique quirks, and those that have used pirates before will probably not be familiar with the fact that pirates are no longer pikemen that cost gold. Almost no one will look at a pirate or a Buccaneer and think Rattan Shield or Coyote Runner. So the Aztec problem is in full effect right now with your Buccaneers, effectively making them French shock cavalry wildcards that no one knows how to effectively counter. So what does all of this mean? The condensed answer is that the Haiti Revolution is stronger than it's ever been before, as buffs to French infantry have kept the concept of the gun line available, as your boosted musketeers and halberdiers will have little trouble protecting your falconets, while the pirate/buccaneer changes in class from hand infantry to shock infantry has given them a new lease in life, as they haven't been overshadowed by the buffed French hand infantry, as they are now their own sort of animal, letting the French player experiment with some shock infantry of their own and further expanding the French roster. Due to these two changes, the French Haiti Revolution has become a great deal more deadly. While it is overshadowed by the new revolutionary France Revolution, it will still be worth checking out, without a doubt. Just make sure that you send the advanced arsenal card before you revolt so that you can research pillage, as well as the group of all system to keep your falconets competitive, since Haiti Revolution relies quite heavily on cannons in its gun line. Due to the importance of infantry in the gun line, the Saint Suisse and French Royal Army cards should be sent in to keep your halberdiers and musketeers strong so that they can protect your falconets, as well as the Royal Fencing School upgrade to speed up infantry training time, which should of course be paired with the Standing Army upgrade once it's available at the church in the Third Age. Don't forget that your pirates/buccaneers are tagged as shock infantry, so they will benefit from the team cavalry card if you send it, but won't benefit from your non-team cavalry cards, which boost the attack of normal cavalry, but don't boost the attack of shock infantry. And also, don't forget that your pirates/buccaneers are outlaw units, so to get them as strong as they can get, you should research folk heroes from the tavern. If you can remember all that, then you will have no problem dominating your opponent with the new French Haiti Revolution.